And we're back. Neighborhood News Studio with George Webb Investigates. Old graphics and old song. We're going to update those soon. We just wanted to be sure we can get in the can here right now. What's happening, George?
That intro reminds me I was 40 pounds ago. So I'm 40 pounds lighter and no more alcohol for me after the stage 4 kidney. So the wine there with the cake, that's a part of the history, both of those things.
You're looking good, though. You're looking good. We're all glad to know that you're feeling good, looking good. And
yeah.
Soon Shong is in the news. Kennedy's in the news. It's all happening. Let's get to it. What's happening today? What do you want to talk about today?
Oh,
what?
Yeah. No, this is awesome. Let me, you turn your sound down. I'm getting
You're getting a double sound?
I'm getting a double sound. Maybe I'll just go real quiet here.
Maybe I'm too loud.
So,
we get a 5x5 from our viewers.
Oh, I know what's happening. I have the YouTube open. I have the YouTube open, so I was getting the 7-second delay. So it's good to know we're broadcasting on YouTube. Ohio in the house. Can't Michigan and Michigan State beat Auburn? Why can't they beat Auburn? So all these great comments coming in from all over. It's great to be tuned in to Michigan again. It's great to be that we're going to be doing Michigan and Ohio. We're going to be doing the show maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, maybe daily eventually. But
we can ramp up like we used to. You know, we've hit the pause button for a few years. You know, life kept coming at us for a couple of years. But here's Soon Shong, you know, just right on cue. You know, continuing with the plan like it never ended. So it's great for us. You know, we've been sitting here on the tracks waiting for Soon Shong to to pop up, and he pops up on Tucker Carlson of all places. So amazing.
Yeah, we've been waiting. You know, we knew the T-cell therapy was coming. You know, when I originally got hit with the Legionnaires, I was down there in front of National Resilience saying, hey, it's going to be Brennan, it's going to be Soon Shong, it's going to be cancer vaccines. So that happened. And so we have the Soon Shong story. And then we also have the Kennedy stuff that we've worked on with McDuff and other people. You know, we've been working on Angleton for 8 years, saying Angleton is the guy who was managing and handling Oswald as a false defector. Yeah, there he is. And there's all my books. Yeah. and behind me, what's behind me here is a Representative Luna, and she's holding up a document. That's in Boise, Idaho, that gravestone, which is something else we want to talk about is user contribution and sending you stuff to put up on the walls at our Trains, Planes, and Automobiles and Citizen Journalism Museum there in Lambertville. But the memo that's behind me, Oliver Stone testified yesterday, as well as this guy named James Morley, who was a big researcher. The Angleton memo was on Angleton's desk. The Oswald memo was on his desk a week before the assassination twice, on the 15th of November and the 14th. He was reviewing the Oswald file a week before the assassination. And this memo here says, happy birthday, CIA. Yeah. This memo right here. Thanks.
There
you go. She's a lot prettier than me, right? She's the one who does all the bikini shots, you know, she's got a huge social media following. Luna does. She's from Florida. But it says here in this 4-page memo that the CIA, this is 1963 memo, doesn't believe in the lone gunman theory. That's a 1963 memo, right? Saying they don't believe in the lone gunman theory. They later updated it in 1978 for the church hearings. Now, do you remember that being publicized? You know, I don't. I sure don't. I don't remember.
We keep getting that. I'm a little rusty on my graphics here.
What you have to do is you have to share another. You got to present another graphic.
Yeah, the whole thing's a little different now. Is that getting it now? There we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so we'll go to JFK. We'll come back to Soon Shong, but I started a new series called the Angleton Angle, right? And we had done so many Substacks, but they were paid because it was researchers, and we're traveling to New Orleans and we're traveling to all these different places. But I've made them all free, and we're going to put them all in the Angleton Angle series. So this is part one. If you want to just scroll through here, you can see Bureau 100 informant that came out in the files. This is Morley testifying yesterday, talking about the memo being on the desk of Angleton with his secretary marking off. Here she is holding the thing that's saying, I don't believe, the CIA doesn't believe in the lone gunman theory. There's the 4-page memo, right, from the CIA saying they don't believe in if they don't believe in the lone gunman theory, who does? They're the ones pushing out all the wonderful terms like conspiracy theorists. They don't believe it. So this shows and then I go through and present a detailed summary for every one of the Substacks. You get if you keep scrolling, you'll get a bibliography of every person and organization mentioned and a detailed summary. This is Chris Milligan talking about the false defector program that Angleton ran with Oswald. So my point is the truth is starting to emerge. There's this guy who's been with the CIA, who has a document, who's a whistleblower, who's come into Congress. These last 3,000 files, Aaron, that we talked about that they were holding back, it looks like they're going to hand them out, like sprinkle them out, breadcrumb them out through Luna. She's the starlet, in the Republican Party. So she's going to get all the attention, but they're going to give her these last 3,000 documents. And this is the juice. This is the juice.
Certainly don't like the way that that's being done. I don't think many people do, as much as, people do love Luna and all her bathing suit pics and all that stuff that is out there. It's a little weird of a way to roll it out, but at least
I think
happening,
we knew the last 3,000 documents was going to be the juice, right? And this is a old Kissinger file talking about a potential, but we go through all the characters and how all this leads into a secret government, a stealth government, a stealth deep state, and then that all the things, Iran, Contra, Vietnam, all the way to 9/11, all the way to military live exercise. It's creates the deep state, all this stuff. Say hi to James Radcliffe from the UK. It's always great to get folks from overseas. And then there's Dave Angleton talking about Grand Rapids. We've been to the beaches in Muskegon. That's where Eric Prince is from. And of course, Blackwater Health. Anytime a mercenary organization gets involved with your health, it can't be good. It can't be good.
Well, as much as I, appreciate the Kennedy stuff, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit, I also don't care, and I think it's ridiculous. And I think COVID truth, the story that impacts every man, woman, and child alive today, and what just happened is much more of interest, I think, to the public. And the fact that they went first with Kennedy Epstein, there's been this whole thing, Kennedy Epstein 9/11 COVID, Kennedy Epstein 9/11 COVID. Those were going to be the 4 truths that we get here, right? Is sort of what they've laid out for us. And why are we doing Epstein Kennedy first? Can we do COVID? Can we go last to first on this one? It seems like COVID and 9/11 would be better to go after before, Kennedy Epstein, but I don't know. I guess who am I to
say? Let's pivot. No, voice the
right,
people.
Right.
Let's people remember you're in the trains, planes, automobiles nexus of America. The guy you're sitting with worked 35 years in train stations, right? I mean, that's where America comes together. It's the broad shoulders of America where you're at. And today's the first day of tariffs for Canada, and that's maybe going to affect the automobile industry. If you want to come over to the listening center, to the community center there in Lambertville, you're welcome. Yeah, let's pivot to COVID because it does affect every man, woman, and child. And this T-cell vaccine is coming like a freight train.
When they're making their move, and we all kind of thought COVID was okay. We thought COVID was a farce, whether there was a couple of couple of liters of COVID, made and dumped in the food there at the Wuhan military games or whatever, or spritzed around in a few strategic areas. There wasn't much COVID. It was mostly, everybody running around with their pants on fire and iatrogenic killing in hospitals with oxygen, etc. Right. So we knew it was all about the vaccine. They wanted to roll out the vaccine and get us to the new age of science. Right. It was all about, a farce, a fraud. Maybe it was about getting Trump out. Maybe, they love the goal stacking. If you can get, kill 2 birds or 10 birds with one stone, they'll always go for that. So get Trump out while we usher in this new era of science is what we all think was the real, fraud behind COVID. And now it seems like they're making their move. Here's Soon Shang right on cue, telling us all about all the wonderful things. And, and not to mention Stargate, Larry Ellison, AI, it's like AI and cancer, having the AI ready to cure all the cancers based on the data that they got from COVID is what was going on here. And why can't they just come clean? Like, why does Soon Shang have to do the dance? Why can't you just say, like, hey, guys, we're not bad people. We knew we were going to have to kill a few million with this live exercise. But now that we're over the hill, now that we're on the other side of the rainbow, we get to cure cancer. So start lining up for these trials. Start, getting involved in this. It's all good. We're sorry that we did this to you. But, because that's what I think's going on. I'm sorry for the spiel there, but that's what I think's really going on. It's like,
well, if that were true, I would be like, okay, well, it was horrible to kill those million people, but yeah, let's bring on the cancer cure. But the part I wanted to show is Dr. Soon Shang has not been effective. He does have a bladder cancer, which is a corner case cancer. It's by far not the most biggest cancer. And if he doesn't pair it with BCG, which has been around, the bacillus, if he doesn't pair it with BCG, which has been around 100 years, he doesn't get those results. He gets very minimal results. He did a trial of this in South Africa, and he hasn't published his results, right? He hasn't said there's a super antigenic effect, which is the thing that causes cytokine storm for the virus. And that was introduced with a furin cleavage site, right? With a USAID partnership with the Wuhan lab. That's how that became super antigenic. There you go. That's BCG. He hasn't talked about how the spike vaccines that he did and others did have a super antigenic effect, which causes cytokine storm, which causes inflammation, which causes all these potential inflammatory immunodeficiencies, which could account for up to 1 billion deaths. He didn't talk about any of that stuff. He didn't even mention the name Anktiva. So there's some great comments, Aaron. We got somebody in Muskegon.
Yeah, okay.
We got somebody in Muskegon on the beaches. We've got our PhD in virology there. Dineport, we've got.
Here we go. Okay, there's.
Right.
Very nice.
On the beaches of Muskegon, they're trying to keep those beaches quiet because they don't want to be overrun. We're trying to keep the Luna Pier Beach quiet so that the neighborhood news studio doesn't get overrun with people, beachgoers in the summer. But my point
maybe
here,
I'm wrong, and it's not ends justify the means. Hey, we are going to cure cancer. It's just we've got to kill 1 million people. Maybe they're just trying to kill a bunch of people. Maybe it is.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if it's trying to kill a bunch of people, but I think they want to experiment with the controls to see if they can do a great reset. And the great reset is not just social credit scoring. The great reset may be, hey, thin the herd. Can we turn the volume down on population? And there is evidence to support that this could be 1 billion people end up dying from this. Mark saying mail-in ballots also might be kill me once, shame on you. Yeah. You can't kill me twice. Black Cat
here. I'll go back on the comments, rapid fire a little bit.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. All those are good, and I think it's important for everybody's comments to get up there. And we also want you to send in ideas and topics for future shows. Somebody said, one I've already got is Trump is converted to Judaism, right? And I said, well, show me some proof of that. His son-in-law is obviously Jewish, with Jared Kushner. But show me some proof of that. But it reminded me of the whole Rabbi Schneerson. The first time I watched you and Mark Buckley talk about the sixth Rebbe and how Jewish supremacy and how it was okay to kill the less than supreme race of Chabad Lubavitch. Now this is not Zionist. This is way out there in Chabad Lubavitch land. But it reminds me of the first broadcast I ever watched you guys do.
It's unfortunate it's not been getting more publicity, because I do still think we're in a Chabad Lubavitch school play, more or less. But that's okay. We can get back to
yeah, we can get back to that's a little extreme.
Yeah. But so here's just we're not going to do the audio here, just showing everybody the Soon Shang and Tucker interview that really brought Soon Shang was making the rounds. He was doing Dr. Drew and a few others. And then when he hit Tucker, it was really time to start pushing back on the narrative, because they're pushing pretty hard on their narrative, and something's going on here. This guy, this Soon Shang, has a very suspicious history that we don't like, and we've questioned a lot. And now when he comes out on Tucker and wants to be the hero, it's like, sorry, bro, not going to be that easy. Can we get a few questions in? And whether we can get the questions in or not, at least George is getting them in here with us. So
we're trying. Just the things I mentioned already about he had a COVID vaccine, he forgot all about it, huge amnesia there. He didn't produce the results from South Africa of the trial they paid for. Why not? Right? He didn't mention the name of the product, Antiva. He didn't mention that it was paired with BCG. All these things that he didn't mention. He didn't mention the shareholder lawsuit. He didn't mention any of the legal troubles he's had with partners like Sorrento when he tried to do this the first time. The miracle cure originally was going to be with the Clinton Foundation and John Brennan. They presented at the 2015 Jackson Hole event. That was the Sorrento product. The Sorrento product failed. So a lot of these things, it's just telling both sides of the story. Every cancer discovery, every time they've discovered an interferon or an interleukin, these immunomodulators, every time they've discovered one, it's been the cure to cancer. Right. And you and me both, right? We've had cancer days. We've had Karmadoc. You have a local doctor. Nobody wants to solve cancer more than us, but we don't want to create false hope either. We want to have both sides of the ledger being presented.
Absolutely. One thing that I find interesting, maybe I'm off on this, but this BCG, so the first word in this is bacillus. Yep. And I feel like I've seen that paired with anthrax.
Anthrax is a bacteria as well, but this is bacillus. I think it's called mycoplasma or mycoplasma.
Anthrax. Okay.
It's just another genus of bacteria, I believe. But what is interesting is in any bacteria, you can have a virus. Viruses can live in bacteria, like coronathrax. Whitney Webb did a big splay on May of 2020 saying, hey, they're trying to aerosolize out of the University of Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh in Medical Center. They're trying to aerosolize anthrax. And then she quoted a Sunshine Project, which had followed that project for almost 2 decades. So it could be by doing the pairing that you can introduce. When you introduce a bacteria, you can modify it to put spikes on it. You could put the GP120 spike on there if you're trying to create a superantigenic effect, an HIV-like effect. You can put the, you can just do other things that are other superantigens that Charles Rixey talked about.
Yep. So if we could do a little review on T cells as well.
Sure.
Because that's what the turn on, turn off is, what you're talking about. It's all about T cells.
Right.
And so T cells, your immune system is largely, the T cells are the biggest part of the immune system, I guess you might say, or the juice.
Yeah,
that's the juice of your immune system. That's what gets you better and, makes you immune to things.
It's what kills you in cancer, a lack of T cells. It's what kills you in HIV. It's what kills you in tuberculosis. It's what kills you, I believe, in hepatitis. It's what ends up killing you in all cancers. It's just lack of T cells. And the oncologists and the doctors watch the T cell count really carefully. Now, Dr. Soon Shang also talks about a later type of lymphocyte called lymphocyte. These are the T lymphocyte over here and the B lymphocyte. And then it's called the natural killer cells, the NK cells.
Here on the bottom right. Yep.
So on the right there, on the left, you're seeing sort of the kind of the histamine. This is the first responders, right? But then over here on screen right, you're seeing what they're talking about. Now, natural immunity, the B cells, you know, when you're taking a vaccine, you have to take that before you get sick. But T cells, they're talking about replacement therapy anytime, and natural killer cells. But T cells is definitely the thing that his vaccine was doing, was trying to stimulate. It uses an immunomodulator. Again, they discover these things and then they modify them. Remember uracil and uridine?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Remember when they
Pseudouridine.
Pseudouridine.
That was the big
This
thing.
is pseudo interleukin 15 is what Anktiva is, and it stimulates T cell production and NK cells. But again, if you don't need it and you're giving it to a 5-year-old, now the 5-year-old all of a sudden breaks out in shingles like rashes because they're already making enough T cells, and now there's too many T cells, and now you got the autoimmune problems where you have like with when joint pain and so forth.
And so typically your body would use very few T cells. If you're sick or something's going on, the T cell response, it's only going to use 1% of your T cells, let's say.
0.01%, 0.01%. So
very, very small T cell response is going to get the job done typically in a healthy person. And if they can ramp it up to 20% or 30%, then all of a sudden you're going to be exhausted.
Right. Yeah. So when you do T cells, you have a very specific memory. So you have a type of T cell for every type of pathogen, right? They link up with receptors. So it's like having a chain of keys, right? So you want to pick the right key. Let's say you had a chain of 20,000 keys. You want to pick the right key to stop whatever the cancer is, whatever kind of cancer it is. You don't want some jamoke out there in your car, hey, can you get me in your car? You call a locksmith and he brings out 20,000 keys and then he starts with one after another and he goes, wait a minute, am I going to be waiting here, Mr. Jamoke, for you to go through 20,000 keys? And also he's scratching your car as he's going. Every time he gets angry when the key doesn't work, he scratches your car because there's
a Tesla.
Yeah, it's a Tesla, right? There's an inflammation reaction that comes with every time you do the wrong key. And this is the problem with the superantigenic effect is you create 20% of your immune system is fired up with these superantigens causing all kinds of inflammation. And it's not fighting the cancer.
And I see what you're saying. That gives them great power in the immune response. Turn it on, turn it off, like you're saying.
Right. And that causes the inflammation and that causes the T cell exhaustion because your T cells are like, hey, I can't keep it this ready state. Right. It's like somebody, I can't remember. There was a guy at a DNC that was pulling the fire alarm every time there was a vote that they didn't like in Washington. And then the fire department in Washington said, we're not going to come over to Capitol Hill anymore, because they're exhausted from answering all the calls. So, these are graphics, and I won't go into. The bottom line of that drawing is when you split, you see how the superantigen there to the bottom has a green, right? There's the key here is there's two binding areas. The AG is one of the binding areas, but then there's a second binding, and that confuses the immune system. It fires up 20% of your immune system rather than 0.01%. And that's the T cell exhaustion. Now, again, part of being a doctor is doing part of being a doctor is doing the analysis, right? And doing the diagnostic reasoning. Dr. Soon-Shiong didn't present any of this diagnostic reasoning. So he didn't talk about what led him to recommend prescribing a T cell replacement therapy, something that generates T cells. If he would have said, well, it's when they got to the subject of virus or vaccine, if he would have said just one sentence, well, the virus had an engineered furin cleavage site, which split the protein into two, which caused the super antigenic effect and T cell exhaustion. So we gotta treat people for that. And also all the vaccines like mine also split the spike into an S1 and S2 subunit, and that causes super antigenic effect. So all those people have T cell exhaustion. So we created a huge T cell exhaustion problem, and that's where long COVID comes from. And now we need to replace what we took. If you would have said that, like you said, honesty, I would have said it was a great interview, but that's what he left out.
And Tucker not really asking any questions at all of relevance other than just teeing him up for, the 13-year-old and you're seeing more cancers. Oh, really? Oh, it's so terrible. I mean, it was really weird. It was really weird. I gotta say,
Peter Duke calls that the yes ladder.
Right. He was yes laddering him the whole time for sure.
Because you're saying yes to when the speaker's talking. Hey, Tucker, cancers are through the roof. Yes, the audience screams. Hey, Tucker, we're seeing cancer in younger people than we've ever seen before. Yes, the audience screams. Hey, Tucker, we're seeing pancreatic cancer in 13-year-olds. I just had a case. Yes, the audience screams. Right? I have a friend who's seen cancer, colon cancer in 7 and 8-year-olds. Yes, the audience screams. It's going to be either the virus or the vaccine. Yes, the audience screams, right? Or so you're getting this yes, yes, yes. Here's a person who's the world expert, the richest doctor in the world, and he's saying the things that we've been called the conspiracy theorists for. So I understand how people all of a sudden want to make mass formation adulation. I understand the mass formation adulation. But then go to the next step and say, well, you know what it is, Tucker, is this super antigenic effect when you split a protein into two. It confuses. It's like getting two messages at once. Go faster and go slower rather than go faster or go slower, right? So the immune system's confused and it creates a cytokine storm. And hey, Tucker, that's what caused this immune deficiency. That's what caused this T cell exhaustion. And now we made a big mistake and now we need to replace that. If you would have said that, I would have been like, oh, wow, this is great. CD8 is what we're talking about. CD8 is right there at the top is the cytotoxic T cell, and that's what takes out most of this bad stuff.
So you want more CD8?
Well, you want more if you're low, if you got low T cell. You might want to put up Allison's. Might want to do all the comments, but Allison,
comments for a minute here. Yeah,
he spent his whole career in cancer research and with people who've won Nobel Prizes in cancer research. So
there will never be a cancer vaccine. You can have 18 cancers at once, he says.
Yep. And then go to telomerase.
Telomerase is the universal cancer target studied by multiple Nobel laureates.
And he worked with Tom Check studying telomerase. And the key here is we went to Winber. We've had 2 charrettes, news gathering charrettes in Winber of our group. We've had 2 in Pittsburgh. We've had 2 I've done 2 in Butler. So 6 in that neighborhood. They're running a private genomic, Dr. Soon Shong now, and Bob Malone, right? With Walter Reed Army Hospital is running a private cancer genome atlas program with one guy from Pfizer, right? And the Rails brothers in his little lab there, right? So that's no,
that's how we found Soon Shong. That's why when I say we've been sitting on the tracks waiting for Soon Shong, it's because when we were doing our research into Winber, precipitated by Bob Malone and Bob Malone's entrance onto the scene, and Bob Malone asking people where they were on 9/11, and then us being like, well, where were you on 9/11? And I know there's some researchers out there who think that our questioning of this with Bob Malone shows that we're in cahoots with Bob Malone, which is ass backwards in a way, but I guess we don't need to get into that right now. But
I don't know how that could possibly be. We're exposing the domain program. We're exposing all these things that got remdesivir into be the standard of care with Jordan Walker, etc. I just don't understand that reason.
We've been hot on his trail, and Soon Shong. So Bob was at Winber. Bob set up Winber, Pennsylvania. And that was a pretty suspicious place for him to be, 15 miles away from the Shanksville Flight 93 when that crashed, and then they had the whole anthrax scare there, and then he leaves shortly thereafter. But then all these years later, Soon Shang purchases Winber, or I don't know if I guess he purchased the whole thing, right? It's now the Chan Song Soon Shang breast cancer research area and everything, and
But
he also
that is
purchased.
when,
Yes,
when a private interest buys a public thing, it basically allows you to get rid of all the records. So we can't do FOIAs on this time. But originally, the lab was supposedly breast care was the cover set up in 1999, but it originally was set up because they were looking at invading Iraq. Donald Rumsfeld's looking at invading Iraq, and they expected a whole bunch of bodies to come back from Donald Rumsfeld had given through Gobonafar, had given anthrax to Saddam Hussein to hold off in the Iran-Iraq war. So the fear of Rumsfeld was, hey, they're going to use the stores that I gave them against Americans now that we're going to attack on Baghdad. And we're going to have American soldiers coming back in body bags who have inhalation of anthrax. And people are going to say, where did they get the anthrax? And then they're going to sequence the anthrax and find out that we gave them the anthrax. Right. So that's going to expose the whole Gilead, and that's going to expose Rumsfeld giving Saddam Hussein anthrax. And originally, these places were set up. Gobonafar was the Mossad guy giving the Iranians weapons, if you remember, but he also was involved in Iran-Contra.
This would have been the guy getting Mark Rich the cheap oil also.
Yeah, he would have been the negotiator, right? And then on the Iraqi side, we were giving him the chemical weapons. You may have remembered later on they did the gas attack in with the sarin gas. But my point is if these dead bodies are coming back to Dover, Delaware, which is where normally the dead come from, and then they go to Bethesda, if they look like they've been chemically hit, there's Gobonafar. Then people are going to go, where did the anthrax come from? And they sequence the anthrax and they say, oh, it came from William Patrick III and Henry Kissinger. Oh, that's not good. How did that happen? So the idea of setting up an abattoir, they originally didn't call them operating theaters in Winburn. They were originally called abattoirs for doing autopsies. Right. And so they had to connect up the abattoirs for the anthrax invasion. Right. And they were also trying like mad to come up with an anthrax vaccine. Right. So that the soldiers wouldn't die in the thousands with Bruce Ivins. And so they made him the scapegoat when he's trying to come up with the anthrax vaccine and they're pressuring him. Right. But they needed to be able to do the autopsies, and then they needed to be able to quickly share that with Bethesda and with the folks at Fort Detrick so that they could be working on, developing a vaccine as soon as possible. So they needed a place offsite about 180 miles away. Maybe it's 240 miles away. I can't remember how far, but the abattoirs were deliberately put away from Washington, D.C. and deliberately put away from the NIH and the Bethesda Naval Hospital and the Walter Reed Army Hospital deliberately, but they needed to have a high-speed link. This is where Dr. Soon Shang had the Lambda rail.
This is where Soon Shang comes in. Yep, with the Lambda rail.
He bought the Lambda rail, and then Bob Malone also, and Nick Jacobs, Bob Malone's boss, talks about putting in the first dark fiber. This is why they put the dark fiber in, because they needed the radiology, they needed the radiography, right? And they needed the sequencing. They were going to sequence the various strains of anthrax because looks like Saddam Hussein might have had several, up to 30 different strains of anthrax. So they needed to do the sequencing. They needed a rapid data sharing between the abattoirs and the genome sequencing in Winburn with their dark fiber. Yeah, you can see where where Nick Jacobs, Bob Malone's boss, is talking about the dark fiber that they put in. Now, remember where Nick Jacobs comes from. On 9/11, Danny Rothschild, an Israeli Mossad general, sitting with him in Winburn, and his people are the first to go out from his hospital to visit the crash site in Flight 93. So this gets into the 9/11, but before that, he came from Boys Town. Now there was, what was it, 75 or 80 different virologists that were at Boys Town in Nebraska, where Offutt Air Force Base, the CIA base in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, why would you have that? To test young men and test vaccines on young men. And Dick Jacobs took that operation and took his PhDs and came to Windber because they wanted to be closer. When they put the dark fiber in, they didn't have dark fiber all the way. Now you see the Lambda Rail eventually did go to Nebraska eventually, Lincoln, Nebraska. You can see it right there.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that high-speed connection. They moved Nick Jacobs' operation closer to Washington, D.C. to put in this high-speed linkage for the invasion of Iraq. So, all these things are recast, as, I did the internet and I had a national supercomputer Lambda Rail for cancer, and all this stuff. And I put this proposal into Obama. The Obama proposal for Lambda Rail that Dr. Soon Shong did wasn't until 2009. This was put in for anthrax and the anticipated invasion of Iraq.
Here, I'll just read it. So National Lambda Rail, NLR, was a 12,000-mile high-speed national computer network owned and operated by the U.S. research and education community. In November 2011, the control of NLR was purchased from its university membership by a billionaire, Patrick Soon-Shiong. NLR ceased operations in March 2014. So that's when we read that, when we first saw that, which was years ago. It was like, what, really? So all these universities with all this public money, no doubt some public, some private universities with all sorts of, very sophisticated, advanced research is just being dropped in the lap of Soon Shong. And then, he'll have a couple years to comb through it, get what he needs out of it. And then he shuts it down in March 2014. And we continue on. It's interesting to note that shortly after that, the Awans began their pipeline into the Library of Congress. But it's almost like, who didn't, you didn't really need brick and mortar, or, you didn't need as much of the physical infrastructure anymore by that time. You could just have a BlackBerry server in a garage with a couple of BlackBerries and you could get all the information that way, right? Well, I'm connecting two different things. I think there's
on this topic, right? I'm very familiar because I was a part of it, going to universities and university hospitals, getting the doctors. University of Oregon Health Sciences was one of my baby, getting them up and running on the internet, along with a consultant at Sun. But this is the big thing that people don't realize about the internet. It wasn't created by the government. It was created by local volunteers getting Sun workstations and putting them and hooking them into, putting the routing software and hooking it into the internet, right? And getting SendMail up and getting the router protocols going and so forth before Cisco routers. Okay. And in Oregon Health Sciences, for instance, and the cancer center there, wanted to get in and learn about all the other cancer research. There was other people doing other things at University of Oregon and Oregon State University and University of Oregon and Portland State University that wanted to look at other things. But this was a giant sucking sound. Lambda Rail was a giant sucking sound, bringing all the research to Windber for a private cancer, a genome atlas project, right? Which was, there were several, but mainly in the area of genomics and cancer and genomics. It started all the way back to before the genome was done in the 90s for not this particular project, but Lambda Rail was all volunteer before Soon Shong bought it. And again, it's a way of taking down the information. After you've got everything you need, like you said, then you take the information down and you can't FOIA it anymore. But I was involved, definitely. We did University of Washington. I was tangentially involved, but Oregon State was my baby. And they did this in the California systems and so forth, because the universities are so closely tied to university hospitals where the cutting edge cancer research is being done. So genomic information is the thing they were going after in this Lambda Rail proposal.
No gene, no green. That's what they say. I feel like I've heard that. Maybe I'm making that up. If I am, I should patent that. But I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard that a million times, right? No gene, no green. That's the way it is now in science. I mean, all the stuff, all the medicines, everything. And I think I've heard that because PhD candidates or even like postdocs looking for, what they're going to do in their postdoc work realize that it's just you got to find a gene. I mean, like there's nothing to do but find a gene and what it does or doesn't do and what you're going to learn about what it does or doesn't do, or otherwise you ain't getting the money and you're not.
There used to be an oh god mnemonic called "One Gene, One Disease," and they used to think when they were doing the genome atlas, and this goes back to Dolston when they were doing the cancer marker project. They thought they'd never be able to sequence the because Leroy Hood hadn't invented the high speed sequencer yet. They would just come up with one gene associated with a person who had a rare disease, and whatever is different in his genome from the other guys is the gene that's causing it. And they discovered a whole bunch of diseases right off the bat. Hodgkin's, the Woody Guthrie disease, multiple muscular dystrophy, Huntington's, and all these other ones, sickle cell anemia. That was the easy part. But then there are more complicated things with a medley of genes like multiple sclerosis, right? Which is still, and cancer is even the hardest one, right? That's the hardest level that you get to. So
the Wellcome Trust is holding the Cancer Genome Project information right now.
I knew it would end up at the Wellcome Trust. This
Cancer Genome Project is part of the Cancer Aging and Somatic Mutation Research based at the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute in the United Kingdom. That's the one, huh? Right?
That's the one.
This is what the cancer gene, or this is it was originally the genome, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this is the one. This is the big one.
That's the one.
The Kevin McKernan one and everything.
There's a new one called the Virome Project. And then there's another one, the Cancer Virome Project. And then there's a cancer, and then there's a proteome project, proteins. So all these things, there's a giant sucking sound to the Wellcome Trust. And this is, goes back to, there's the Human Virome Program, right? Run by NIH. So like they said in the, Dr. Sun Shang said in his Tucker Carlson interview, the hepatitis causes liver cancer, right? And then he went and said HPV causes cervical cancer, and these other viruses cause this cancer and that cancer. So he's basically saying coronavirus is causing all these cancers, right? But he never talks about the superantigenic effect, right? He never says the coronavirus caused this, right? He just says cancer equals COVID and COVID equals cancer. And everyone just said yes when he said that, because of this spike in cancers. People know so many people. We just had Rick Olson and his wife die. We just visited him, a week before she died. And, so everybody's seeing the spike. So there's a lot of things that he said that you want to go, yes, but then the details, the devil's in the details.
And just all, the metadata, like you've always said, follow the metadata, and it's good to go back a couple years or a decade or two. But yeah,
check the comments, because we got some great comments coming in.
Thanks for being here, everybody, on our reboot show here. It was a long winter. It was a long winter here in Michigan. It was cold. We didn't get a lot of snow, but it was super cold. And George obviously went through a lot all winter. And here we are. It's spring. It's Liberation Day. I don't know if that's causing the markets to go up or the markets to go down. Here, I'll put the markets on the screen here. We can do a little market watch while we're doing comments. Aren't the markets supposed to do something today, or something?
Well, the tariffs go in today,
right,
and
right. Everything's just going sideways.
Trump is saying that he can't stop fentanyl without a 25% tariff from Canada, and I'm like, well, is 25% really going to stop the fentanyl trade? 120,000 overdoses. I remember when I originally did my website, which was giving FBI informants hard drugs when they had committed, weed crimes. And I said, hey, this is when overdoses were 10,000. I started that in 2011. Now overdoses are 120,000 a year, and going up. This is the empire of pain and the whole legal opioids as well, right? With OxyContin and stuff. That epidemic is out of control. But I don't think the tariffs, 25% tariffs, going to stop it, because they'll just drive in from take the ferry from Windsor over to your place. I mean, you can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, interesting stuff. There's it's going back to the other researchers on the internet who who shtick you about what you do or don't say. I think you have lots of interesting things about opioids and fentanyl overdoses, and you're probably one of the most preeminent researchers on that topic. So it's interesting when people say you do or don't talk about whatever, right? But I think the fentanyl overdoses, I think we all agree the fentanyl overdoses have covered up a lot. They covered up a lot of the COVID death and other things, and I think they're covering up murders. Straight up, I think that it's more than just the the fentanyl deaths could be covering up any number of things, because it's so pervasive, ubiquitous, and it's so cloudy, we don't know what's going on. And one that to switch gears a little bit, with to go to Suchir a little bit, we could talk about the
Sure.
Suchir biology case, probably one of the most important cases you've investigated in the last few months. I wonder, I think there's a lot of murders that they just say it was a fentanyl overdose. That they kill the person either by poisoning them with fentanyl or however they kill them, and then they just sprinkle some fentanyl. I don't even know what fentanyl looks like, hardly, to be honest. So I don't know if they sprinkle it or what they would do with it, but they kill the person and then they say it was
an eardrop. The Mossad had a fentanyl eardrop in the 60s, where while the person's sleeping on their side, they could put a fentanyl eardrop, and they were looking for a rare, a thing they could say the person overdosed, like the Jim Morrison type thing, with just an eardrop. And that was the 60s or 70s. I think they had the fentanyl assassin eardrop. So all these people dying could just be a random number generator saying, take all the deplorables and then just generate a random number, and then we send out the team to the disorderly orderly. Once you're in the hospital, and like I was in ICU, you're helpless, right? They could come in at any time with the disorderly orderly and put the fentanyl drop in there, and then it's a little harder in the hospital. But at home, remember, we had all these people die suddenly. Right. They came out with a calamari clot cover, which nobody ever had any radiology to support. Again, this is a way of doing low intensity warfare, right? If you want to. We're going to do a House of Deplorables show on Saturday night. So that'll be fun.
Just to close that, or to finish the point with Cheers, I wonder, something didn't go right there. Something went wrong in terms of the attack, clearly, and I wonder, because it sounded like there was date rape drug in his system and that he had been drugged. And it's like, I'm wondering if they were trying to just drug him and then, kill him some way, say, oh, it was a fentanyl overdose. And it's just another fentanyl overdose in San Francisco. Who's going to even look twice? I mean, that's why we hear about all these fentanyl overdoses. And I wonder how many are just murders. And I think, I don't know if that was what was the plan for Suchir, but clearly something didn't go according to plan in terms of his killer. I mean, the idea that it was a suicide is not even, I don't even want to enter. That's so preposterous to think that it'd be a suicide. There's no way it was a suicide.
Well, who wears a wig and stuffs a bloody wig under and has time to do it after they've shot themselves in the head? Wait, before I die, I'm going to stuff this bloody wig, black wig under, and I'm going to put the gun under my right knee. I mean, that's just crazy to think how they could come up with that.
So crazy.
Yeah,
but I wonder if they were trying to drug him, get him in a state where then he was easily, killed just with chemically. And then you just chalk it up.
I talked to poor Mina, and I still talk to her, and I want the logs that he was looking at, because the black cat was the last thing. Good morning, everyone.
Sorry.
The
black cat, these while you're making your point. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. The black cat was who he was talking to, and I believe that was a person he believed was a date. I definitely believe he's heterosexual, not homosexual, but I do believe that the person who was presenting themselves was either transsexual or gay, impersonating a woman. I have good reason to believe that from going to the site 7 times and being followed twice by the person. Or at least the handler of the person. So, a date situation, it's a date rape drug, right? A date situation, it does happen. Tinder and Grinder and so forth. We know that there's filmmakers that, love to date 18-year-olds on Tinder in New York. So why wouldn't, it happen in San Francisco? And that's the perfect scenario. Again, they take down the cameras. Why did they take the cameras down? It's state sponsorship. They're protecting somebody. And a date is a situation where you would let somebody in, right? So there would be no forced entry. So why they didn't pursue the black cat angle and the black cat lead is I don't even understand, right? Why wouldn't they pursue? He was talking to the black cat. Who's the black cat, right? That's the last person he talked to before he died.
It must be so hard for them to keep up, and of course we get nothing. The municipality where this occurred is leaves a lot to be desired. Nothing against any of the officers there, but obviously they're
Nancy Pelosi's district, and all the AI. He worked with the top people in now 4 different AI companies. He worked at all 4 because he worked in the same building as X and OpenAI. So there's OpenAI. He also worked with Ilya Sutskever. He started Safe Superintelligence. He also worked with John Schumann. He went to Anthropic, and then he went to Thinking Machines. He also worked with the people that left to DeepSeek with Kai-Fu Lee in China, and they leapfrogged. And all this happened when his adaptive post-training drive was missing. So why wouldn't you start the investigation of who would want the adaptive post-training drive? Right? That to me, and then all of a sudden there's 3 startups, and then we find that OpenAI and Sam Altman has a startup fund that he didn't tell everybody about. He didn't tell the board about it. And he's using Elon Musk's money, $100 million, to train the AI, and then he's taking all the profits with Mark Andreessen. So there's a whole bunch of things that are tied to this murder. That was Ilya Sutskever, by the way.
Yeah. Well, it is certainly interesting times we're living in here. The new administration has given us a lot of hope, but also a lot of new territory to cover, or old territory that we've covered that we're getting back to. But I mean, it's cancer, it's AI, it's cancer vaccines, and it's AI, and the future of AI is the new landscape. Yeah,
I totally agree. It's deep vision, and again, we haven't found it yet. Let's do the comments slowly. Let me do each one.
I know.
But let me just say that Elon Musk and Doge have not found. They found USAID Predict, which is the live exercise for the coronavirus, but they haven't uncovered PEPFAR yet, which is going to be huge. And they have not uncovered Deep Vision, which was the AI, like you're saying, AI vaccines that came out of this. You take all the data from all the genomes, from all the, Daryl Galloway swabbing, the Navy swabbing program, Bob Malone's CIA partner. And you take all the ID Prism information of Daryl Rickey, his partner with the FBI, ID Prism, and you put all that into a database, and you combine that with the NSA call data records, right? We're supposed to have AI vaccines in a program called Deep Vision, which is VZN, which they haven't, Doge and Elon Musk haven't got to it yet. So it's amazing how our DeepMind human network is still better than the AI network.
So let's dive in on that a little bit here, and then we'll do comments, because that is something you talked about earlier this week, that I think was very important, was this adaptive post training. And so adaptive post training, I mean, that's really that's just learning. That's like you're the student, you go to the lecture, you sit there quietly, you listen to the lecturer, you take your notes, then after you go to the library for some adaptive post training. some studying, some diving into books, some of your own research to figure things out. And that's what that's what the AI should do, theoretically, right? Is you give it seeds and then it takes it and learns on its own. And so the adaptive post training, that's really where I think the Suchir case needs to dive into to learn more, because that's the meat of what the race is about. Everybody wants their AI to be able to learn on its own better, and he was at the forefront of that. And the guys he was on the hike with are on the forefront of that. And it's maybe somebody is talking to them and they're just not letting us know about it, I guess.
Well, I'm trying to prove to Formina, the mother and the father, that it is adaptive post-training that's the secret. She's in technology, but a little bit different area. So she didn't now her father understands AI. So I'm kind of appealing to Suchir Balaji's father. But if you have to understand what AI pre-training is first, which is you want to send Suchir Balaji out and just start pointing the script, the Python script, at all these sources. One's called the Common Crawl, which is everything on the internet. It's petabytes of information, right? There you go. And then you've got all this information, baseball scores from 1927, Babe Ruth and whatnot, right? And then you want to supplement it with private sources. So you get all these books, Annie's books, and you get all the books, and then you get the NSA to give you call data records if you really want to know how Americans speak to each other, or how people in Britain speak to each other, or how people in Australia speak to each other, or how people in New Zealand speak to each other, or how people in South Africa. It's all different. It's all different colloquialisms and expressions. But now, what are you left with? You're Ken Jennings. You're the expert in Jeopardy. And unless you get on the Jeopardy show, that's the only way you're ever going to monetize all that knowledge, right? Where the money comes in and the expertise comes in is when you do the post-training, the adaptive post-training. This is the first is sort of like reading every encyclopedia, but you're not a doctor. Because you haven't used it in cases, and you don't have the diagnostic reasoning that's needed. This is why DeepSeek scored very poorly on the U.S. medical licensing examination. This is why AI didn't. But with post-training, if you get a bunch of people in China, this is what Scale AI did, and Scale AI was one of the people that was on the last hiking trip, by the way, and you mark up all the documents that are used in training, and you put a big NO, literally, take a big magic marker and put NO. If it's a picture of a bridge, you put NO, right? And if it's a picture of an X-ray from the Winber lab, you put yes. Okay. And you don't have to do the whole database, but you do like 10,000 different pictures of no. This is exactly how it happens. And these are the experts that are with Suchir Balaji. And then on the X-rays that go to the Winber lab, that show people that have cancer, you put yes. That's round one. And what happens is it learns what an X-ray is and what an X-ray isn't. And then that's round one. And then, so instead of you having to do petabytes of information, now you only have to do terabytes. And then you do that again, another round of that with a little bit more informed people saying, well, this is an X-ray of someone with cancer, and this is an X-ray with somebody who has Legionnaire's disease. Now you're paying more money for a little bit more expertise, and now you're training another level. And this is why it's adaptive, and this is why it's post-training. Now, what if I had the formula for how to do that in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 different layers of refinement? That's the juice. That's the secret sauce. That's what Suchir Balaji had on his hard drive. So it's not a big program, but it's a program which allows you to create derivative models that are very small, but very expert. That's where you make the money in life. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects, professionals, PhDs in various things, psychologists, etc. And that ability, the secret sauce to create these derivative smaller models, is what he was killed for, right? Until poor Mina understands that, and until her father understands that, they won't understand why their son was killed.
And so, last comment or last question on this topic is just the NSA call data records. Is that this Mainway program? Is that the
Could be. I don't have enough evidence yet to say that. But
database maintained by the United States National Security Agency containing metadata for hundreds of billions of telephone calls made through the largest telephone carriers in the United States?
We have a call data expert in the chat right now who's worked with the NSA. So I
non-trolling
non-troll Allison.
He's okay. Nice.
Is a call data record expert. He's manipulated CDRs for dozens of years. But there was several programs. There was Prism, if you remember, and then that was the program that was a precursor to this all going into Palantir with Peter Thiel. Total information awareness. You remember with Whitney Webb wrote about this, which is basically getting all the data, proprietary and non-proprietary, public and private, together to make a better database. If you want to know how Americans talk, like Black American slang in Philadelphia, there's going to be different words for things, right? And that you would only get that through getting the text messages and the phone calls, between people or whatever dialect all over the world. This has to be how it's done, right? We're not speculating here. These adaptive models is the only way you could do it. And John Brennan, with the Clinton Foundation, it's been over 20 years that they've outsourced this part of the NSA in case it's ever exposed. They have their own NSA in a partnership with the Chinese Academy. Now, they're not sending their information. They're just sending deplorable information. We showed how Igor Kolomoisky got the money to do this. He got 20 million or 17 billion from the International Monetary Fund, a couple of things. DeepSeek is interesting because DeepSeek is started by
going with this, right? Yeah.
DeepSeek is started by supposedly a farmer and a farmer's kid who goes into becoming now this leapfrogged all the billionaires. And I did the presentation in Silicon Valley, a mile away from Y Combinator, where Elon Musk wrote the first check for OpenAI to Sam Altman, right? And we said DeepSeek is going to leapfrog everybody. I had 2 presentations in Silicon Valley by Y Combinator. It said DeepSeek has already leapfrogged everyone. This December 5th, and then another one a little bit later. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're crazy," except one guy who worked for Mark Andreessen was in the meeting, came to our thing, and another guy from Stanford said, "Yes, Google did get all the Stanford Cancer Center medical data records that they were bringing into the library there, the Lindman Library. They had brought in all these cancer records." And then the other guy who worked for Andreessen Horowitz said, "No, you're right. This is being farmed out to DeepSeek. There is a joint venture." And I'm like, "Oh shit, man. This is Brennan. They're doing dossiers and outsourcing NSA for working on the deplorables, again, through the Clinton Foundation. Not for everyone in the United States, just dossiers, everybody on the Clinton Foundation that were pointing toward deplorables." So everyone said, "Oh, it's conspiracy theory. DeepSeek isn't going to pass anybody." I said, look at their USMLE scores. Look at their English proficiency scores. You don't get that in a remote village in Guangzhou, right? How do they know black slang in Philadelphia, right? Well, it turned out later, about a month later, this hit, right? And that shook the whole stock market and everything. And, how did DeepSeek get to be so smart? And everybody made all kinds of excuses for DeepSeek. It's the adaptive post-training that is the juice, right? And it's what Suchir Balaji was killed for. So,
and it's what I guess. So, what I suspect is that they lost the election. Kamala lost the election, and it was like, all right, get it all out of here, send it all to China. Send it. Just it's the Nazis running away with the gold to Argentina. In a few, hey guys, we got 2 months to get all this NSA call data and all this other rich data. I mean, we all know data is the most expensive, the most valuable thing in the world now. We've got 2 months to get all this out of here to our friends, quote unquote, abroad, whoever they might be. And they did, and they exfiltrated it all. That's probably when they pulled the plug and let DeepSeek have the NSA call data, and who knows what else they might have let them have in that time. But the minute they lost, it was just like, get it out, get it out, get it out. And they did. And that's why we're then seeing all this precipitate. And I wonder if, the murder of Suchir, it was even just, collateral damage in that process.
He's the patsy.
Right. It's just, we got to get rid of him now. Because that was after the election, right? He got killed shortly after the election.
Yep. He's the patsy. And so now nobody's responsible with these new startups. Nobody's responsible for stealing anything and violating any copyright law because they're getting it from Suchir's database. So it's like, no, we got it from OpenAI. If OpenAI stole it, it's called, scrape the scraper. If the scraper scraped it illegally, this is the thing that Wonton Tat with Clearview, with Peter Duke, he was saying, hey, Wonton Tat said, I can scrape it from people who've already stolen it. Right. You click on Allison with his CDR patent, because the people we're talking to here, my brother worked at NSA, first of all. So I'm not like, I'm going on firsthand experience. I haven't talked to him in 5 years, but he actually, I've been to his house numerous times. I've interviewed him personally numerous times. He does have a patent for call data records on his wall, right? He did work at Quest, and then they bought him over at Global Crossing, and then Global Crossing rolled up into, I can't remember which Bell company, but we're not guessing on this, right? We're not guessing. This call data records is everything you've talked about. Right? Every conversation you've had, text, social media, phone calls. And this is how DeepSeek went from having a very poor rural Chinese person who's only spoken Chinese and never seen an English newspaper. That's how they went from that kind of a score on English proficiency to a score of, hey, you've studied ghetto dialect for 20 years and had a PhD in jive. I mean, they don't just, their scores in English proficiency weren't just good for Shakespeare and the Common Crawl. They had the dialects down, and that only could be done with the call data record information. The metadata screams that this is offshored. This has been offshored by Brennan and company to dossier every man, woman, and child in the United States. That's a deplorable.
And if Kamala won, they'd have let Sam Altman have it?
I think it would have just stayed at NSA. It's an illegal program. It was an illegal program when, Ron Wyden originally talked to Clapper, and it's Clapper, it's Brennan, it's Comey. This has been around. Really, this started with Dick Cheney with 1293, it's 12333, and Ronald Reagan, this illegal surveillance. So it's just been stacking on itself with new data sources. Hey, the human genome, we can get everybody's genome. Let's have a mass formation psychosis. Let's have Daryl Galloway's plan from Ohio State University of swabbing everybody in the Navy, right? Let's roll that out nationally. Let's have swabbing booths on every corner. And now we have the national genome database. And now let's feed that into the system and add that to all your conversations. Same sort of thing. Eventually, your phone, right? Which takes your biometric confirmation. And now I know where you are, right? I want to be able to verify, this is the NSA talking, when you walk under a Lieber light pole. I want to have a chain of communications, either through your phone, who identifies who you are, and your phone then verifies somehow biometrically that it's you. So I know where you are at all times. And I want to be able to take your picture from the Libre light pole and fix you there. And so I can play a movie of your life. This is total information awareness. This is what Whitney Webb was talking about with Palantir. This is, the eye of, Zor or Gorgon or whatever. We've been talking about this for 8 years, but it's the plan.
Sorry, I had a little.
Are you losing battery there?
No. Well, I don't know. Just learning. It's like riding a bike. First day back on the bike takes a. You might.
We
have
should go through some of.
Let's get some comments and then hit the road here, and
yeah.
I'm gonna just scroll up. I'm gonna scroll up a little bit because I definitely missed quite a few of them here as we went. And again, thanks everybody for being here. So glad we were able to try to get neighborhood news studio rolling again. It's going to be an exciting spring and summer here. Glad you liked the opening. Yep. And great comments from Dr. Allison there. Melissa Probers is a lawyer for the New York Genome Center. Harold E. Varmus, also deeply tied to Gilead Sciences with Rumsfeld and George P. Schultz.
These are the things that come from our researchers that are just like gold gems. And Dave is one of the cadre of researchers all over the world. And we want people, first of all, to send research, and then we want to display the research real time rather than just having it come to email. But memes also, if you have memes, like Kate Hempstead is well known for creating great memes. There's Melissa Prober. She's involved with J. Dana Hughes. She's going to represent all the people. She represented the 9/11 firemen. She's going to represent the people that are long COVID now. Sixth generation Chinese warfare with fentanyl. Yeah, these are good comments. RIP to Rick Wolson's wife. Oxycontin.
You're going to be over there with Rick in a couple weeks or in about a month, right? There's a charrette in
May 1st to the 7th. We've got Bobby Kennedy's Children's Health Defense. I'm going to be presenting at. I think Black Rabbit may be in France. So bonjour, mon ami.
All
right. Task Force. We have a French charrette going on right now in Normandy, by the way. I just wanted to let you know that we have international charrettes going on. I'm not involved in. I'm not traveling anymore. I'm still trying to get this lung back, but
so we have from Cindy here, 2 sets of Bennington board members who didn't want to sell to Polaris were found dead of fentanyl in Chicago. Interesting. Yep. West Portal is magical. It's a major city, very magical place. West Portal? Where is that? Is that?
I think Portal in Portugal. I don't know.
Okay. It's not like Sandy Hook was the only mystery George Webb solved. If James O'Keefe releases his grinder data, why won't they release Black Cat's details?
There's Portal in Arizona near the border, but I don't know if Portal is in Portugal as well.
South African RV claims it was the water delivery guy that hit him on contract for the NVIDIA short people. I'm going to have to explain that one.
Portal, Portugal refers to the city of Porto or Porto on the north, in North Portugal on the bank of the Douro River. Let us know in the comments if that's what you're referring to, which Portal. I'm assuming West Portal, San Francisco. Okay. I'm familiar with that one too. Okay. The Pioneer Building where we took you to, I think you're talking about the Pioneer Building in San Francisco where X is located, and OpenAI started there. I think OpenAI, they moved out of there, but that's where Suchir Balaji worked, in the Pioneer Building. And now that X has bought Twitter, that's it. He put a giant X on top of it. We had covered the story about how Suchir worked there, and Sam got the check from Elon there, and then Elon threw him out because they weren't producing anything. They were just taking all of his money and training the thing with it. Now Elon's put a huge X on top of it. on on top of the Pioneer building. But I didn't realize it was the head of the eugenics movement. I don't think it is.
Oops, sorry, I didn't realize that popped up. Yeah. All right. So shelter in place coined 2012 Boston. I didn't realize that.
That was for lockdown when they
Right.
were trying to catch the Tsarnaev brothers, who were CIA operatives, state-sponsored CIA operatives, and they were like, "How did these kids get away from us? They were supposed to die at the end of the thing, right? They were supposed to be the bombers, and then we were supposed to kill them, and now they're running on." And so that was where shelter in place came from, when they were going house to house trying to catch the Tsarnaevs.
Character sketches of the hikers is critical to understanding the story and building a timeline. Yeah,
Those
absolutely. I mean, nobody's trying to, throw shade or say anybody's guilty of anything here, but it's obviously critical for the timeline.
We want to interview them, and you could tell in the first 5 minutes if it's a cooperative person or somebody who's resisting. But we just want to understand what his state of mind was, in the last hours he was alive, including his right. So what Allison's saying here, and then if you are interested in his thing to clear the coronavirus, his seems to be the only one that actually works, which is this Allison V, which is the active ingredient in garlic. But my point is if Suchir Balaji is the patsy, and he's the one who violates all the copyright, and then I get my information and derivative models from Suchir, I didn't violate any copyright. Suchir did. Suchir's the patsy until October of 2024. And then he says, "Oh, I did it, but I think it's wrong. Now I have to backdate. If I'm Ilya Sutskever, I got to say I left before Suchir, because I don't want the cloud to be over my intellectual property. If I'm John Schulman, I got to say I left before Suchir. You see what I mean? I got to backdate myself. Otherwise, it falls on me, and the culpability falls on me for the copyright violation. So Suchir is a key patsy, and him going to the New York Times really screwed everything up. And he was about ready to go to the next week. He was preparing a drive of proof for the Associated Press. That was going to make it worse. So that's when the whole thing, kind of blew up. But Sam Altman had the OpenAI startup fund without the knowledge of the board, and he was farming out the intellectual property to all of his lieutenants, and that makes up the AI landscape now. All the lieutenants of that farmed out the intellectual property from OpenAI.
Here's his op-ed that he wrote in the New York Times. Suchir Balaji helped gather and organize the enormous amounts of internet data used to train the startup's GPT chatbot. This is before he died.
About 3 weeks before. Why you wouldn't consider this a murder possibility here when he went public with the biggest industry, the hottest industry in the world, $1 trillion industry right now, is beyond me. 45 minutes they spent determining he committed suicide.
9/11 comment here, like they sent the Twin Towers 9/11 steel to China.
Get rid of the evidence.
That's one. I mean, we've gotten nothing on 9/11 since Trump's taken office. I mean, the Epstein, JFK, it seems like 9/11 would be.
We haven't gotten any Epstein either. I mean, right. Kash Patel said there's 256 conversations going back and forth to Adam Schiff. Humpty Dumpty Society and Mark Epstein. Anyone? Nope. We haven't gotten that yet either.
23andMe data. Yeah. I didn't even think of that.
My data's in there. And again, 23andMe gets it voluntarily. You think you're helping trying to solve cancer. You think you're helping in rare diseases. And then what happens? It goes out of business after they get as many as they're going to get. And now it's sold off and brokered off to China. We covered this with Connect. Connect was taking all the voting data and combining it over in China with Eugene Yu. That was in Michigan. That was in your Lansing home city.
They want you to discuss the Butler shooting again. People here were intrigued. we'll get back to that soon enough, no doubt. Another patsy. I'm very confident Crooks was another patsy. Poor guy was just volunteering, trying to do what he could to help out, and he's dead on a roof.
We'll do that at our next show. I'm sorry to interrupt.
We can't get too much into it. I guess we've been here for a while, but just patsies all around. Intermedia Communications, WorldCom, Verizon, NSA, Prism, Snowden's mouth. Yep.
These are all the companies he worked for with Call Data Records. So, and consulted with. So again, we're not guessing when we're talking about the NSA and the Call Data Records, not guessing at all. A lot of them were my customers, by the way. In the early days of the internet. Dave's talking about Les Wexner and the Mega Group and the Bronfmans and that whole connection. And we'll get to that in the future as well. Rosenstiel and,
Crypto AG sounds totally Galen org, Kissinger style deal. Yeah. Well, George, I think, we'll get back at everybody either this weekend or next week. We'll be ramping up here. It's, it's still a little cold here at the Metroplex, but summer's coming. We got great plans for the summer. Hope to be having an ongoing charrette all summer.
Could you show just one last thing? We can start the Jamboree right now. We were going to have everybody, bring their RVs to a field and then form in the shape of Stonehenge, and so that you could see it from space and all this sort of thing. Maybe August we'll do that, but we can start the electronic Jamboree right now. You can send in your memes right now. I did the Truth Train's a Coming was one of the memes I had a while back, and there's a new imaging engine put out by Sam Altman. And I don't know where he got the imaging engine, but you can say today's Liberation Day, right?
Today, that's what they're calling it. I'm not exactly sure what we're being liberated from or to or with or what the right term is there. But
what you can do is you can combine whatever's happening in the news with some kind of beautiful, iconic design from the Midwest in the area of planes or trains and automobiles. So you could say, well, show me the celebration in Chicago in Union Station when the Truth Train is coming in, and make it look like the Zephyr. Remember the Zephyr had that beautiful skylight area where people could sit on a round table, and as they're touring across the country, it's completely 360-degree skylight. I went to the Wisconsin design firm that designed it. Or you could say, make it look like a Stutz Bearcat in 1924 Stutz Bearcat, or make it look like the Auburn or a Duesenberg or a Cord. Have Trump, coming by in a Kennedy-esque type parade in a open convertible Duesenberg. As a matter of fact, by the way, when we go to the Ford Museum in Dearborn, Kennedy's limo is in the Ford Lincoln Continental is in the Ford area. But send these things in, and then we'll put them up. We'll put up all the artwork on the show, because the artwork is great, and it helps us all kind of think about, hey, we have these AI tools. Either we get to proficient in them, or they're going to use them against us. So it's deplorables versus them, and we need to be better than them. And today I thought, well, I did 3 truth trains this morning while I was getting ready for the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can use all the help we can get here. We don't, everybody remembers the great Andy Dabala, but he's not exactly, ready for showtime here. So we're going live without Andy these days, and he was certainly our big graphics man. And there's been such advancements in AI since, we were on air a few years ago. So any help we can get, certainly you can come here to the studio and hang with us and do the work, or send it in, whatever works. But yeah, we'd appreciate everybody's contributions. I'm going to bring us back, take the truth train off there. I had a few more graphics here. Maybe we'll save them for next time.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other stories we want to get to? I think definitely Les Wexner, and the other Epsteinites. I mean, that's where it's like everybody's talking Epstein, but I mean, the Wexnerites are out there, easily found, easily identified. You know,
We visited both underwear factories in Windber. Les Wexner owns 2 underwear factories, and Dick Jacobs says so in his book. And both of them are convenience stores that only could have held 5 or 6 people. So those were fronts. Those were Mossad fronts that were in Windber. Why does Les Wexner have 2 Mossad fronts in Windber, Pennsylvania? Because it's a private cancer genome atlas project, and you do need to send supplies every once in a while to people that are working there. I think all the data is going to China. It's being lambda railed straight to China, and there's a private genome cancer program with the CIA and Dr. Sun Xiang and John Brennan with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. It didn't just start with the live exercise. That's the point I'm trying to make is Rumsfeld and PEPFAR and so forth took the South African programs and brought them to the United States to create mass formation psychosis in the United States. He took the things that took away immunity and created immune deficiency and brought them to New York and brought them to San Francisco and created the AIDS crisis, right, to do PEPFAR. PEPFAR has been going 30 years, right? This has been a military program for low intensity warfare since Rumsfeld, and he covered it with 9/11 and the money going to this thing since the 80s. He covered it by hitting the auditors with a plane, right? He covered it by hitting the auditors with a plane.
It's terrible stuff. Oh, you know, it was
I mean, right. or you can believe guys who couldn't fly a Cessna can do things that seasoned 757 pilots can't do.
Well, I see Charles is asking about a phone number. Yeah, we're going to get the phone number going again. We used to be able to take callers. Those were the days, you know, I mean, and X Spaces kind of has that capability in a way. It's sort of like if you're doing a space and you bring someone in, it's kind of like taking a caller, but I don't know, not really. I like the old school taking callers, you know, like a radio show. Yeah, that we used to do that. So yeah, we'll have a phone number here soon. I'm just trying to relearn all the tech and everything. But yeah, phone calls. We'll be taking callers here within a week or two. And yeah,
just for the record, we talked about the Sting pathway. I see people saying Stingray. We talked about the Sting pathway that was being worked on by all the insiders like the Bat Lady and so forth to cause cytokine storm almost immediately in like April of 2020, right? We were talking about the superanergetic effect with the Sting pathway. I can't remember all the names now involved with the Sting pathway that they were working on with bats to cause this. This has not been something that just happened or is an accident that there's a superanergetic effect with the coronavirus. Michael Callahan had at least 10 years working with the Bat Lady, with the Harvard chair and the MIT chair in Wuhan. It's actually 20 years with Matt Pottinger, right, in the Erasmus lab working on this stuff. This is the Sting pathway. And then dampening the reaction, right? Dampening the reaction is what they were working on. So it's sword and shield, 20 years, CIA, Chinese collaboration with USAID and China. 20 years in a weapons program, but starting with Matt Pottinger. We're going to delve into this more in future episodes.
Absolutely. No doubt Sun Xiang. We'll leave Sun Xiang out of that one. But he's, right. You know, he's obviously just part of the crew. I mean, there's something going on. Just the fact that he was in South Africa to get his start with all this other, you know, all these other, I guess the black bomb. I mean, the folks doing apartheid, you know, the apartheid regime, the fact that he was there pre-apartheid when there was all sorts of chemical, you know, Wouter-Bassan type experiments going on is another one of those suspicions of just
Wouter-Bassan didn't just do chemicals. He also did biological weapons. Right. He did tuberculosis modified forms. He got it from the United States. He was importing down so often they would go woot, woot, woot when he would come in. He was in Fort Detrick so often they would go woot, woot, woot when he came in. right? So he was a big buyer of genetically modified anthrax, genetically modified for ethnic targeting, for blacks in South Africa. So this isn't, and this was the 80s. This is the 80s. So this is what Rumsfeld said. Hey, wait a minute. If I bring this in and turn down the volume a little bit, I'll be rich. And Gilead came out with the first. They're still trying to do the AIDS vaccine, but Gilead came out with the first therapeutic, and the same thing for hepatitis, the same thing for tuberculosis. These are all the Gilead blockbuster drugs. They were nothing like remdesivir, nothing until the mass formation psychosis.
Yep. Well, I think we'll leave it right there. We could always keep going on any number of these topics. We haven't chatted in a while, so
Right.
you got to hold back a little bit for the next time. So I'll play our outro song, everybody's favorite outro. But if you could help us get new graphics in here, you'll notice these graphics are from, back in like 2021, 2022. So it's been a lot of research and a lot of charrettes and journeys since then. But we'll play that on the way out. Any closing comments, George? Thanks for.
No, this has been great. This is a great opener. I really appreciate all that you do. And I just want to say the studio there looks fantastic. And I had a big hand in, putting all that stuff up.
Here, I'll make myself big. Folks can maybe see in the mirror up here. You can see Mark's hanging right next to me there in the mirror up on my above my right shoulder. And you can get a view of the studio. I would turn the camera and try to, get a view of that, but I might disconnect something. So next time we'll be roving. We'll have a camera where we can rove around and show everybody what's going on in here and everything. But you can see it a little bit.
If you have anything metal, if you have anything die-cast metal, if you have metal models bigger than Matchbox, this size of my hand or bigger, metal die-cast, heavy metal die-cast, planes, trains, or automobiles, and you want to keep citizen journalism going, we're going to put a display case of just planes, trains, and automobiles, heavy die-cast, super quality metal of things that made America great, right? From the Midwest. And so heavy die-cast metal in good shape, bring it. And then any extra, and every one of these things that they have in the display case, they haven't shown the display cases yet. You can kind of see them in the mirror.
Maybe I will try to shift us a little bit here, folks, I guess. Let's see. Hopefully it doesn't disconnect. There's Mark.
Mark, wave Mark.
Mark. And there's the studio. Yep. So it's a coins, cards, collectibles shop, at least in the front end. And then, we've got our shows and our studio in the back, but got the display case up there. And
where do we send them, Aaron? Where's the address that people
8015 Summerfield,
8015 Summerfield.
8015 Summerfield is our address. Oh, see what I did? I think I disconnected it.
No, I can see you still. I can see you still. Die-cast is the heavy metal, the die-cast stuff is the stuff that lasts, right? It's not the cheap metal, it's not the cheap aluminum, but it's like the heavy Inconel, the nickel and the die-cast stuff is what we want. Planes, trains, and automobiles. The experts are right there. And send them in. Oh, can't hear you.